Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. I'm still battling a little bit of laryngitis over the past week, so excuse me if I have to mute myself and take a drink of water during the presentation. I'll try not to, but it's a delight to be back again doing this presentation. As Charles said, I've done this a number of times, and I've had significant involvement with online teaching, with adjunct professional development, and with students kind of across the board. So it's a delight to share my experience with you and to share some tips with you, and just kind of a real high-level overview of teaching in an online world. As you all know already, the Chicago School has a very developed, very robust online program. And there's a lot of opportunities both as students and as future potential instructors in the online world at TCSPP. So something to share with you in this slide presentation are just some current trends that we're going to go over in online learning, some insight into what online teaching is all about, and just some points of reference and resources towards the end. As Charles said also, feel free to ask a question at any point during the presentation. It's really much more of a conversation than anything else, and I'd be happy to answer. I see a few names that I recognize in the audience today, so I appreciate you attending here. And I will make this presentation, this slideshow, available as well to Charles so that you can have it for your notes. But just a little bit about myself. Currently, I am a dissertation writing expert for the National Center on Academic and Dissertation Excellence, which hopefully you all have either had experience with or will have experience with. Working as a dissertation writing expert, I get a lot of student-facing time, get a lot of input and insight into the writing and the research that's going on, as well as talking to students about what their goals are and what they want to see in their careers. A lot of students have expressed interest in online teaching as part of their portfolio. So I think you'll find this an interesting conversation today. Prior to joining NCADE, I was the director of adjuncts for the Chicago School, Chicago campus, and online campus. So did a host of things with those who came in to teach for the school, professional development-wise, hiring, mentoring, all that kind of stuff. I also teach online at 2 other schools, but I'm also a certified online instructor through the Chicago School, and I'm teaching an online course as we speak. So that's a little bit about myself, and we can go ahead and start the presentation. Let me advance my slide here. Okay, I used to not do this before in this type of environment, but it's always interesting to me to open up the floor before we start talking about online teaching and some of its elements, to kind of throw the question out there to anybody on the call, who I know or who I don't know, who would like to maybe share their thoughts on why you want to teach. I used to just go straight into the presentation, but thought it would be more beneficial to kind of open it up to, you're not required to say anything, but if you would like to share something, it would be really nice to hear from you guys. Why do you want to teach? What is drawing you to this particular task, to this particular role? Would anybody like to share? Charles can unmute everybody, and if anybody would like to share, please do so. It's always nerve-wracking to be asked that question. If you do have some comments that you'd like to put in the chat box too, that's the magic of GoToMeeting too. You don't have to speak, and I can't force you to speak. So if you want to share a comment in the comment box about why you're wanting to teach, then we can do that. I do see, Dan, I believe, when I was a military instructor, I found the more I taught, the better I understood the subject. I think that's a very important part to online teaching, and I urge all of you to keep that in mind as you move into potential teaching roles. It's, from my perspective, it's extremely important to always remember that not only are we facilitating a course and sharing our knowledge with our colleagues or with our students, but we are also always perpetual students. I don't think there's really ever a moment where we should stop learning, and especially in online learning, as technology continues to advance, probably sometimes well beyond our capacities, it's always good to stay on the cutting edge. Great, I'm seeing a few more comments here. Benjamin, I'd like to share your comment. I have had an amazing international career in diplomatic and NGO worlds. Now I would like to give back to the next generation and use my experiences as case studies. Seems like great work opportunity in retirement on the beach. Yep, it's snowing outside my window right now, so I can't really comment on the beach, although maybe one of these days I can get a gig on a beach and teach a course from there. But you mentioned something that's very common, that you want to give back. That's critical too. There's passion there. There's something that you've experienced, that you've benefited, and you want to reach back out to the students to kind of help them along that journey. Thank you for sharing that, Benjamin. I believe Pam has also shared something. I enjoy teaching, especially when you can tell that the student has an inspiration or suddenly realizes that they have learned something which can help them in life. You know what? I think that encapsulates my whole teaching career. I've always told myself, if I reach at least one person, or if I reach at least one student and help them realize something or change a perspective or understand something or feel better about themselves, then I've had a successful teaching career. So I think that's really important, and thank you for sharing that as well. Anybody else would like to share, please feel free to type in. We can return to the chat box periodically and check in on that. So just for the sake of laying out a short little agenda for you guys today, for the topics for today, I thought I would cover a few bullet points here. Again, this really should be a conversation, so you don't have to wait until the end to post a question in the chat box. Charles will alert me to a question if I don't happen to see it, and we can talk from there. So please feel free to type in anything at any moment. We're going to look at some interesting trends in online education. What to expect in a career in online teaching. Now, those expectations, those particular things that we share with you are broad ideas of what you can expect from an online teaching environment, specifically what type of work environment we're looking at. But I encourage you to research online teaching at a variety of different institutions as you build your career and portfolio. Each institution is different. We're going to look at some of the types of people that are recruited to teach online, some of the tools that are typical for teaching online, kind of specific to the Chicago School, but most certainly technology that we all encounter every day. Some of the challenges and some of the successes, and I'll be interested to hear from your perspective too if you've faced any of these challenges and successes, either as somebody who has taught online or as a student from the student side. And then the question and answer, which again, the question and answer really is something that can occur at any point throughout the entire presentation. So some interesting trends to start off with online education, and we're going to start off with some really common online course types. And then the next few slides are going to show you some statistics that came out in a recent report. Actually, the report was done in 2012 and then updated again in 2014, which with some interesting tidbits of online learning. But generally speaking, when you are looking at courses that are offered at an institution of higher education, these are the types that you are going to see. This is a handy little chart as you plot your career path. There's the traditional course, which some of you may hear referred to as the traditional brick and mortar course, meaning you're actually physically on campus in a building, in a classroom. The traditional course, of course, is 0% online, right? It's all traditional. I tend to hesitate using the term traditional because we all kind of live a blended life anyway in general. But if we have to go to a campus and be in a building, in a classroom with chairs and an instructor and our colleagues, generally most of the time the content will not be delivered online. Although, again, I think arguably most courses are blended now to a certain extent, but there's still a lot of traditional courses, I suppose. Web facilitated is interesting. That's something I experienced very early on in my career. It uses web-based technology to facilitate what is essentially a face-to-face course. Prior to joining the Chicago School, I was a professor of French language and literature. Needless to say, all of my classes, quite frankly, were face-to-face because it was a language learning environment, but we used course management systems, learning systems, web pages, so on and so forth to add value to the class. So when the students would leave the class, they would still be able to encounter the language in some way. You may have experienced that in some way too. Some of your classes may really be traditional classes where you're face-to-face, and you might have an assignment or two that's on a website outside of class. I know a lot of high schools are doing this now, where the students still obviously go to school in a typical high school, but also have significant amounts of research or assignments delivered online to them that they can engage throughout the week and the weekend. The blended hybrid course, I really think at some point will maybe take the majority of classes that we see. It blends online and face-to-face delivery. Some of you may have attended executive retreats or executive sessions at the school where most of your course is online, but you may come to Chicago or Los Angeles or Washington or wherever for a weekend retreat or a weekend residency or something of that nature where you'll be together for 3 or 4 days. So the vast majority of that content is delivered to you online, and then you might have a meeting here and there throughout the course of your time in the school. A couple of semesters back, I taught a course for the International Psychology Department, and it was a hybrid course. So most of it was online, and then we met every other Saturday for 4 months. So, a limited amount of face-to-face delivery. And then, of course, you've got your true online class. Like, everything is online. There's really no face-to-face meetings unless you have Skype or GoToMeeting, and everything is delivered online. So this chart gives you kind of, in essence, what you can be looking at as you develop your teaching portfolio. My personal recommendation, my personal opinion, is to try and pepper your career with as many of these as you possibly can. As you look to teach, as you seek to build your portfolio, seek to build your career, don't say no to any of these. Build them out and experience each and every one of them. Each of them have value. Each of them have challenges. And it certainly is a good resume builder and experience builder to be in each of these categories as you want to continue teaching. So here's some interesting statistics that have come out of some recent reports. This report is available on a really neat website. Some of you may already know this website called InsideHigherLearning.com. A really great website, and they have a fantastic job search function on this website. And then there's a whole bunch of reports and books and e-books and things that they deliver and upload there for free. Those of you who are doing research, really great articles. Inside Higher Ed is the name of the online magazine, and I believe it's InsideHigherEd.com. So this particular question that they asked was, does online learning fit strategically within an institution of higher learning? This was the original report that was done in 2014. It was, 2012. Was updated again in 2014 with a couple extra years of information. Chief academic officers were asked this question, of which 64% roughly agreed that it fits strategically within an organization, while about 11% or so, as you can see, disagree with that. And the data seems to continue to reveal that online learning continues to increase importance. I know very few schools in my very small world that do not offer online learning. or at least some type of option from that previous slide where you might have a blended course, really the best of both worlds, or some type of hybrid or some type of web facilitated course where you'll get something in addition to the traditional course. This particular data chart here goes from 2012 through 2013, so you can kind of see the progression of online learning as a function of an organization's strategic plan. So some interesting stuff to share. This as well will show you the market increase in how many students are learning online. Right now, it is estimated that about 33.5% of students take at least one online course in their career. A short 12 years ago, roughly, this was at 10%. Right? So it's pretty steady increase over the years as online learning takes on more importance in the schools from the strategic perspective, as well as what students are wanting to do in terms of their own education, taking an online course in addition to whatever else they might be doing in their lives or in their academic careers. Okay. Oops, let's see, let's advance here. But then you also have some interesting charts here that show that there's kind of conflict within an institution, right? Which is also quite interesting. Institutions that have online course offerings already feel more confident about the quality of online learning. And that actually is maybe a point where I can open up the conversation a little bit to anybody who would like to share. You can see in the chart here that learning outcomes in an online course compared to face-to-face, the vast majority of the people who responded think that online course learning objectives are either superior or the same as face-to-face. And these are within institutions that already have online offerings, so they can see what's happening with these types of courses and what type of feedback and information is collected. But on a larger kind of meta question, would anybody like to share their initial opinions about learning online? What do you think? Do you find the quality to be superior, the same, inferior? Have you had any really great experiences or any very poor experiences that have shaped how you look at online learning as a student and how you might be able to impact it as an instructor? If anybody would like to verbalize it, we can unmute as well, or again, feel free to to type in the chat box too as well. Would anybody like to share anything? You may all be typing, so I'll wait for something to pop up on the chat board. Dante, you said online and on-ground are more of an apples to oranges comparison. Why? What do you mean by that? Would you mind sharing?
This is Shar. I always
Hi, Shar,
felt
how are
that
you?
online learning. Good. How are you?
Good, good.
I believe that online learning, to me, it felt like a lot of busy work, and sometimes I didn't feel like I was getting the right content or enough of the content that I wanted to get out of for example, a face-to-face class.
It is really, really interesting that you bring that up, because I am the course that I'm teaching right now is called TOPS. You'll see that a little bit later in the presentation. It is a course that's required to teach online at the Chicago School. And I had one of my colleagues share with me that a couple of the assignments in the course felt exactly as you have described it, Shar, as busy work, especially for somebody who has had experience as something that did not bring any value to their learning, to their to their consumption of the class. So your comment is really timely because I think there's a good segment of people who feel that there's a lot more work involved in online learning, both on the teaching end and on the student side. And I'm going to give you some insight into that in a couple slides too. But I would argue that the assignments themselves are designed, hopefully, with the good intent of adding value to your learning experience. It's the management of the class, both by the instructor and by you, the student, that may shift the value of those assignments slightly. And I'll let you know what I think about that a little bit later. I'm seeing a couple comments pop up.
Hey, Stephen.
Here.
Stephen, can you hear me?
Yeah, Charles.
One of the things that I'm seeing, and even with the comments on in the chat box, I'm seeing a few things here. I'm seeing that the communication between faculty and staff, faculty and students being timely, vice versa as well, and then also too, I think there's a learning curve with students. I mean, once you're on this online platform, you have to learn this new technology, and if you are used to being, let's say, quote unquote, the traditional student, there's a learning curve for becoming a student online. So once you get really used to being a student online using the platform, you tend to be better at being a student, just as I can see the professor being better at being an online professor. So you want to comment on a few of that, on that?
Really, really, really timely comments. Really very interesting comments. I do see in the attendee list that one of my colleagues who's actually in the class with me this term is on the line. I'm not going to force any comments, but if you're willing to share, please do so, because the course itself, the TOPS course, which stands for Teaching Online Pedagogy and Standards, addresses these very questions and comments that are popping up in response to some of this data that I'm showing on the screen. The management of the class by the professor or the instructor is critical to show that there's involvement and engagement and accountability for the online course itself. Remember, when we go to a traditional classroom, we all have a responsibility to get there physically on our time, to make it to the classroom, and to be engaged in that particular time frame we're together. Online learning happens all the time. There's no downtime, really, quite frankly. It can be at any moment in your day. It can be at any moment in the day of the instructor when one chooses to get on and respond to a post, respond to a question, grade a particular assignment or whatnot. And the communication between the instructor and the student is absolutely critical to establishing boundaries, I would venture to say, so that there are expectations from both the student and from the instructor that can be addressed right off the bat, because we are not in a bricks and mortar classroom where we know we are going to meet each other from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock and then we're all going to leave. The online learning environment is not that way. It's extremely fluid. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It's always available in some format. And so giving those expectations and delineating those boundaries at the beginning of a course are really important. Going back to Shar's comment about the value of assignments, that too is a critical piece that alternates between the student and the instructor. The instructor is taking the course, is leading the course really as a facilitator, being there to provide not only expertise but to guide the students through the navigating of the assignments and so on, and to give feedback that, we always hear the clutch words of your feedback has to be constructive and positive and move things forward, and that's not untrue, but the feedback also has to give a sense of engagement and value to what the student and the instructor are doing together, right?
And you know, Stephen, and just to piggyback on what you're saying, because I've been reading some more comments. A couple of things too. In addition, um, can you speak to one comment which is centered around, let's say, online learning versus the traditional in the classroom learning, where um, Benjamin was mentioned that he learned a lot more on the online platform, particularly because of he was able to read all of his materials at his time. He was able to read all of the material to contribute to the learning of the course, versus sitting in the classroom not really learning as much or even attending class as much. And then I also saw that the diversity, the ability to be in classrooms with people from all across the world, and being able to contribute in the dialogue with individuals who work in different environments, who live in different environments, to be able to contribute to the subject matter.
This is a real benefit to online learning. I mean, even in my work with dissertating students, I have students who are living in various parts of the world and who are working on research and dissertations that encompass different cultures, different perspectives, different issues that are going on in different parts of the world than my own. And as an instructor, it really enriches my life to be able to encounter those where I wouldn't necessarily encounter them in an on-ground course. That's not to say that doesn't happen. I mean, most universities have an extensive international student population, so you are getting that diversity. But a lot of students who are in online classes are living a life at that moment in a place that you may not have experienced yet, but you're experiencing through your participation with them. What Benjamin said about the work is very, very interesting too, because you will find, and I find this just in my own personal research as well as my participation in online teaching, that posting a response to a question in an online chat room, in an online discussion board, is markedly more developed than a conversation in an on-ground classroom. Because you're right, Benjamin, you do get to read most of what it is that you're preparing for. Not only that, but you get to formulate and articulate your response and include references. How many of us sit in a normal classroom and say something to our class, and at the end of our statement say, parentheses, Smith et al., comma, 2012, comma, page 42, close parentheses. We don't do that. We don't necessarily reference everything all the time within an online classroom or within an on-ground classroom. Not saying that we don't, but when you look at the discussion boards as they develop through a particular online classroom, students are citing, students are cross-referencing, students are quoting other students' posts and then building on them. A very in-depth and multi-layered response system comes into play in an online discussion board. That can be a detriment too, and it can also be a difficult thing to manage as an online instructor if you feel that you need to respond to every single post. And we'll talk about that too in a minute. Some really good feedback for thought on this. Let me advance the slide as we go. But you'll see here a much different picture at institutions, I'm sorry, that's supposed to say at institutions that do not offer online courses. So if there is an institution that does not have any type of online offering, you can see quite a change in their opinion of learning outcomes. And they distinctively indicate that they are inferior to a face-to-face classroom. So it does speak to, I think, what one of the comments that Charles mentioned indicated: the more you participate in online learning or online teaching, the more you get comfortable, the more you learn about it, the more you develop as a self-motivated learner or teacher, and the more you have success at doing it. So I think there's a little bit to be said about that. The more you do it, the better you feel about it. So what can you expect? And this is going to touch on all of those comments, I think, that were already stated, and will continue to open up the door for more conversation as we go through this presentation here. But what you can expect from teaching online. These are kind of the four large categories of things that online teaching is about, anywhere with an internet connection, pretty much, right? Benjamin just alluded to this with students all over the world, wherever you are. Are you at Starbucks, train station? I mean, they even have SUVs now that are on the market with, you know, hotspots within the car itself, so you're able to connect to the internet while, hopefully you're not driving, but somebody else is driving, and you're connected to the internet within your car. You know, large swaths of internet access across the entire world allow for teaching online to happen anywhere and at any time. It is fast-paced. I would imagine most of you who have taken a course at TCSPP, for example, know that it all happens in 7 weeks versus a quote-unquote traditional semester, which is typically 15 or 16 weeks. So you have classes that are condensed and happen at a very rapid pace. The teaching is also at a rapid pace. Obviously, you are within that 7-week boundary as the instructor, and so you're following the same pace as your students are. So a lot of information, a lot of assignments, a lot of happenings within a really condensed time frame. It's always changing, and by that I mean technology. You know, 10 years ago, well, I started teaching a little bit over 18 years ago, and I still had tape recorders and cassettes that I would play for my students. As things started to evolve, you know, you started to see the cell phones. Well, my original cell phone was the flip-top phone with the really bad black and white graphics, and you could play one game, and you know, and you couldn't text too much. Then things certainly started to evolve into the smartphones and the tablets and very powerful personal computing devices, and this continues to evolve. You have voice-activated technology that can help you write. You have massively powerful cell phones. Canvas, of course, which is the Chicago Schools learning management platform, can be done from your iPhone, from your Android, from your laptop, from any place that you need to do it, and it continues to change. It's also a very solitary endeavor, and maybe some of you feel that already. As much engagement as there is, you're still not face-to-face. You're doing it alone. You're at home, you're at your office, or you're on the train, or you're somewhere, and you essentially are alone. You're not responding. You're not engaging with people face-to-face. You may have an opportunity to engage on GoToMeeting or Skype, but even that, admittedly, I would venture to say for you is probably different than having that face-to-face contact in a classroom where you may have a 3-hour course, but you get up for a half an hour in the middle and actually go and grab a cup of coffee with somebody and walk to the coffee shop and walk back to the classroom. So for me, when we talk about a blended approach where we have the best of both worlds, we get online learning and we get a little bit of that face-to-face time too, and we get both. So it is a solitary endeavor. Nature of online teaching. This graphic kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of how online teaching is going to look for you on a day-to-day basis. Some elements here that are important to realize, that it's very structured. I don't know if any of you have taught at TCSPP yet, but it's structured so much so that the class is ready to go for you, right? You just kind of step in to the instructor role and you begin the class. The syllabus, the readings, the assignments, the rubric, everything is already there. Everything's already prepared by the course designer and by the subject matter experts. You certainly will have input into the process, but not so much like it is when you're developing a class for an on-ground course where you write the syllabus, you bring it to the class and have it printed at the school, and you kind of go from there. Online learning, and I'm of course speaking specifically from my experience at TCSPP, is very structured. It's all there for you. You simply step into the role, and you follow each and every rubric, each and every assignment down the line. It's a quick turnaround, right? We talked about this already, the fast pace of online teaching and online learning. You have essentially a week in between every assignment, every module during the course of a 7-week course at TCSPP, for example. So the TOPS course that I'm teaching, for example, for those who are interested in teaching, and I hope to see some of you in that course in the future, we open up the week on Monday. The first discussion is due by Wednesday. The feedback and everything falls in on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and the final submissions and grading and everything kind of happens by Sunday, and then we start all over again on Monday. Most of you probably have already had this experience. It's very quick turnaround. It moves at a very fast pace. There's also a lot of accountability in online teaching. You step into the role, but you are expected to manage that course. And kind of if you take a kitty corner up there to the strict guidelines pie slice there, that kind of goes with accountability. Each online department and just the online education in general at TCSPP has very high expectations of you as an instructor. You will respond within 24 hours. You must respond to all students' first post, at least their first post. You should return small assignments within 3 days. You should return larger assignments within 4 days. And these things are monitored on a regular basis to make sure that those expectations and accountability are being met. It's very applied. I think that speaks to knowledge of technology. You are constantly moving forward with technology advancing. You're using the new systems. You're dealing with computers, with email, with learning management systems, with some of the synchronous and the asynchronous technologies like GoToMeeting, Skype, WebTricks, whatever your flavor is on those things, as well as all the devices that you have going at any given time for your class. And it's deliverable based. I mean, obviously education in general is deliverable based, but in an online classroom, the assignments have specific rubrics. There's specific points attached to the rubrics, and really the only way that we can assess how the class is going is, are those deliverables being met? Not only from the student, but are you, the instructor, delivering back to the student in a high quality manner? Are you giving feedback in a timely manner? Is your feedback helpful? Is your grading helpful? Are you returning those large assignments in 4 days and the small ones in 3 days? Are you responding to each and every student's first post? Those are the deliverables that are looked at from an instructor side. Charles, are there any questions popping up? I don't see anything.
No, I don't see any questions popping up at this time.
Good.
We're
All
good.
right, good. I'll keep going. Going. So, with some of those in mind, I probably should stop for a minute. Are there any questions about these previous 2 slides, the what you can expect from teaching online, or kind of this little pie chart of the nature of online teaching? Is there anything in there that is of interest to you to ask a question about, or anything of that nature? I think, did this question just pop up? What I have seen is that schools vary greatly in their online management systems. Some are better than others. Boy, if that's not the truth, I don't know what is. I've been at a variety of different universities, and some of them have Blackboard. Some of them, this is the first time I've ever encountered Canvas, which I like. Canvas seems to be okay. eCollege was the previous online learning system here at TCSPP. I didn't have a problem with that one either, as it was kind of Blackboard based. I was at a community college that I taught at that had a management system that was really bad. It was slow, it was clunky, it was by far not user-friendly. I also taught at a university that had their own proprietary learning management system. It was built on Blackboard as kind of the foundation, but everything, every module and little piece to the learning management system was developed entirely on that campus by their IT department. So completely proprietary and completely designed as specific to their needs. A question just came up too. I'm going to go back up to the one that I saw first. Since you have taught for a long time, are you enjoying the movement to more structure and pre-design? Not so much. I like a little bit of the creative aspect of being able to develop a course from the knowledge base that I have in keeping with the curriculum and the learning outcomes of the university, for example. However, what I do like about the pre-design is the rubric development and the assignment population of the actual courses. That helps take a lot of pressure off of instructors from developing every single piece. And while I say that I'm not a big fan of the pre-design of the syllabus, you do have input into that. You have full capacity to speak with the department to add a text that you think might be important, or to maybe take one away, or maybe change something. It's all part of having a conversation with the department. So whereas it might not necessarily be as liberal as it used to be, where you create the actual syllabus and everything that goes along with it, you still do have the freedom to participate in that process. So I think that's a benefit too. That's an interesting question too. This question was from Diana. Would you comment on the differences, if any, there is between your experience as an on-ground versus online instructor? Is one less or more rewarding? At the risk of sounding trite, I really do find a lot of value in both of them, and I really find a lot of value in the blended approach, having a little bit of both. That seems to be the growing trend. There's a lot of organizations now and universities that offer on-ground classes with, or online classes, I should say, with on-ground elements, like those weekend retreats or those residencies. The Chicago School does that as well. If you're in the IP program, you have a residency or two every year, where most of your courses are happening online, but you do get to reunite with each other and be with each other for a 4 or 5 day weekend, which I think is really nice. But since you put me on the spot, Diana, I think too, I think each one has to be considered separately. I really enjoy the flexibility of online learning. It's really important for my work-life balance, for my family. My oldest daughter has a significant disability, and so I appreciate the flexibility of online teaching to allow me to be in places where I need to be with her at particular times during the day. I miss a lot being in front of a classroom on a regular basis. I loved that feeling. I loved that energy that was there when you're in an actual classroom. It does exist online because the writing is so fantastic that I consume from my students or from my colleagues that it's just like reading a great paper every day. So that's a real big benefit for me too, but I think each has to be compartmentalized, if that makes sense. You have to pick and choose what you value in each of them, as well as what you might find a challenge. Marilyn asked, can one be both an on-ground and online instructor during the same time period at TCSPP? Yes, absolutely. You can teach an on-ground course, and as long as you've completed the TOPS program, which I'll talk about again, you can be eligible to teach online. Do be aware, though, that when you're teaching at the Chicago school, there is a limit to the number of credit hours that you can teach in the academic year. I believe the limit is 22 credit hours. So however you manage that, as long as you don't exceed that limit, then you'll be able to teach whatever you want, and you just kind of can plan it out through the year. I think I got all those, Charles. If there's anything I missed, let me know. I'll keep going on because I know.
Yeah, you got them all.
So good. Who is recruited to teach online? Well, that's kind of a large group of people, but professionals, those who have had experience, content specialists, those who are versed in a particular methodology may be approached to teach a qualitative or quantitative classes. It certainly would appeal to those individuals. Retired professionals. I'm still trying to get my dad to teach an online accounting course, and he just won't do it. But he's a retired professional. He did it for 40 years. And retired professionals who've been in a particular field like psychology are a real benefit to online teaching. It's flexible for their lifestyle, for their retired lifestyle now. It's also a way for the school to tap into their years and years and years of experience. Research professionals, recent grads are also a good group of individuals to do some online teaching, specifically because a lot of them are very well versed in technology at this point. And a lot of other groups too are typically recruited to teach online. So, it sounds like many of you fit into one of these categories, or into a category that might be somebody who has been teaching online or has been teaching on ground but really wants to expand their horizons a little bit. And it's a great thing to do. You can have the best of both worlds. You have the on-ground teaching, the online teaching. And the nice thing about online teaching, too, when you're applying for online teaching, is really you can apply all over the place. When you're looking for an on-ground job or a specific full-time job for your career, most of us are restricted to looking in the area where we live, right? I don't think I would be off base saying that. We live here. I live in Chicago, so when I'm looking for a stable job, I'm looking for Chicago, right? But with online teaching, you can expand your horizons beyond the boundaries of where you live. You can look at universities in other states, in other countries. They'll be hiring people who can teach online, and you'll be able to do that because of the flexibility that online teaching offers. So it really kind of balloons your job search opportunities quite a bit. In terms of finding places. I don't know. There was a question that just popped up. Is TCSPP using interns for instructional design or ISD graduates? I'm not going to answer that right off the bat because I don't know. I can do a little nosing around for you though and find out and get you a better answer before I say yes or no. I'm not sure what they're doing. Would that be okay? Hopefully. I can get back to you on that. Charles, if you wouldn't mind maybe cutting and pasting that question for me so I don't lose it, I can do a little hunting.
Okay, will do.
Thank you. Some tools of the trade here. So TOPS, I mentioned that a couple times already. Teaching Online Pedagogy and Standards. It is a required course that you take if you want to teach online at TCSPP. It's an 8-week course. It runs every online term. It really covers everything we've talked about today, from giving feedback to using synchronous and asynchronous technologies to trends in online education to working in a group online, which just happened this past week. Was our module this past week. I'm one of the instructors for this course. There are 2 others as well. There's typically 3 sections every term. You can typically find a link to register for this course on the National Center for Teaching and Learning website, on their link through the Chicago School, or you can contact me directly and I can get you all set up with that. But that happens every 8 weeks, and in order to actually teach an online class, you have to complete the course. And you have to complete it with a passing grade of 80% or above. So there are points associated with it. It's not meant to be overwhelming in terms of a course, but it does require some significant work and attention to detail as you participate through the course. Once you've completed that, you're eligible to teach online. I should also put in an important caveat here. The online teaching world is very fluid. It all depends on need. It depends on enrollment. It depends on what courses a department may need. So, you know, if you complete the TOPS course, you're ready to go, you're eligible to teach online. It all depends on what the departments need, specifically for TCSPP. You may hear from somebody right away. They may come to you and say, hey, Bob, I have a great class for you. I need you. Or you may not hear from them for a year because they may not have any space. They may not have a class. They may just not have anything for you at that moment. So you have to approach online teaching with a bit of patience at TCSPP specifically, which is why I always advise you kind of broaden your searches to other schools that offer online learning. TOPS is a course designed and utilized by TCSPP, but it is open to anybody who wants to take it. There's no cost. It's free. Okay, even if you are not a current TCSPP employee or student or staff or whatever, you will be assigned a special email so that you can be linked to the course. And then when you've completed the course, then you get a certificate of being a certified online instructor. It's fully acknowledged and accredited by the school, and then you're eligible to teach online here. And it's a really neat thing to put on your CV as well, that you've done this course. Good question. What degree level? Let me go back one question to Shar there. Can the course be taken in conjunction with your current TCSPP courses? Sure. It's just another online course. You want to make sure you manage your time properly, though. You don't want to, you know, take the online course and then sacrifice your work in your other courses. So you just want to make sure to manage your time. But it's always available. It runs every 8 weeks. What degree level is needed to teach? At TCSPP, most online courses require a doctorate degree, a terminal degree. There are some programs at TCSPP, and you'll have to investigate that individually, that will hire somebody with a master's degree to teach a course. But for the most part, the teaching of online courses requires a terminal degree. I don't know if that's going to be changing at any time. It's always worth checking with each individual department, as some of them may have different approaches and different guidelines. So definitely ask about that. Do you need to have completed a certain number of credits to take TOPS? No. TOPS is an individual course. You simply have to take it if you want to teach online at the Chicago School. If you're looking for online teaching elsewhere, you may find that other institutions have a similar course that you must take. The TOPS course is not transferable to those universities, but they might have something similar. You have to go through like a training program or something of that nature. But it certainly is nice to have it on your resume. Benjamin, there are some other, there's another course that the National Center for Teaching and Learning offers for dissertation chairs, which is a really good course if you're interested in or potentially becoming a dissertation chair. And then I believe there's a learning to teach program that is on the National Center for Teaching and Learning's website as well. So you probably want to check that out for sure. Some of the other tools of the trade that you have here are Canvas and GoToMeeting, Skype. We've talked about all this already. Smartphones and tablets, your laptops. VoiceThread is a really neat program that some of the departments use at the Chicago School. I check out voicethread.com and you'll see what it's about. Just some really nice tools to have at your disposal. I do have to say, too, and I'm putting in a plug-in for the Chicago School here, but the Chicago School offers a very competitive environment for being an adjunct, teaching part-time, so to speak. It's a very good pay for an adjunct. There's a lot of opportunities to teach online and on ground, for that matter, and things continue to grow at a nice pace. So there seems to be an opportunity at the Chicago School. So definitely check it out. So again, some of the challenges and successes to online teaching. We probably have covered a bunch of these in your really great comments. You guys have been a very active crowd. I've enjoyed that a lot. There's more outreach, flexibility in schedule, innovative technologies are some of the great successes, engaging discussions. Also think about access. There's a lot of people who can't get to campus, whether it's because of a physical disability or maybe they're too far, or you have a family, you have a full-time job, you need to be at home. Online teaching offers you the same flexibility as an online student might have. You can come in and teach the course on your own pace. Some of the challenges, it's always on, it's 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. You could feel obligated to always respond. The potential for the runaway discussion, I mentioned that briefly. Think about this. If you have 20 students, each of them are supposed to do one initial post, which is 20 posts, then an additional 2 posts for each of the students, and then each of them are responding to each other, and you're responding. Those discussion boards can grow exponentially. So it's up to you to manage your conversation, so on and so forth. That could be a drawback. Feedback is always difficult sometimes. Sometimes you maybe are not sure if what you're writing is getting across to the student, or the student is not sure if he or she is getting across to you. So those are things to always be aware of. And I realized that we were right up at the end here, like 3 minutes left. So I think that was my last slide. I'm certainly open to any other questions, but Charles, feel free to share my email with everybody as well. I'm more than happy to talk about online teaching, my experience as an adjunct coordinator, and my experience in NCAID and teaching TOPS and so forth.
Great. What I'll do is everyone who logged in, you'll receive an email, and then I'll have Dr. Mack's information for you guys to follow up with him. But at this time, feel free to ask any questions. I am recording this, so I will put it up on our website. But I'm going to stop the recording now. But feel free to ask any questions that you need at this time, and then look out for that email that I'll be sending over to you.